We don't talk about sports, politics, or religion. We don't talk about sex, drugs, and rock and roll, speed, weed, or birth control. We don't talk about abortion, addiction, abuse, or anxiety. We don't talk about our feelings, mental health, bullying, or depression. We don't talk about anything uncomfortable, controversial, or taboo. We don't talk about. Hello, my name is Mariska Kutsen, and welcome to We Don't Talk About, the podcast where we might shock you, offend you in the name of raw and real discussions that could leave you feeling uncomfortable, confused, and challenged. And who knows, you might just relate or learn something. Many of you may know me as the journalist from Devilsdorp. You know, the one that fell in love with the serial killer from Krugersdorp. Well, that was awkward, right? Well, if you think you've heard anything, you ain't heard nothing yet. So sit down, shut up, and get ready to get uncomfortable as we take on tricky topics and everyday issues that we usually don't talk about. Warning: this is a raw and real podcast with sensitive topics that may trigger you or relate to you. The views expressed by the guest on the podcast does not reflect the views of the host and vice versa. No bullying, hate speech, or racism allowed. Please note, haters may be made an example of. You have been warned. Welcome to We Don't Talk About. And today we're going to talk about Devilsdorp. So my next guest needs no introduction because it's me. And I will be answering all the uncomfortable and controversial questions you may have about me. So one of the most frequently asked questions I get about Devilsdorp and my involvement is, what the fuck, Mariska? How did you fall in love with a serial killer? Another frequently asked question is, where did you meet the killer and did you know him prior to the murders? And then last but not least, why or how could you fall in love with the killer? How did I fall in love with the killer? Accidentally. You know, it all started. I was the reporter in Krugersdorp when the murders happened. They called them the appointment murders. And I was most probably partly accountable, or, you know, it was partly my fault for those names or the depth of those names. So, you know, initially I knew one of the victims. And then eventually, one of my own family members, my cousin, was arrested under suspicion for the murders. Okay, so this actually like intensified my interest into the case. You know, initially when Kevin McAlpine was murdered, it was a family friend of ours. So the first mission was to figure out like who was this person that killed innocent people. And then secondly, when my cousin was arrested, you know, it was a new obsession because I wanted to figure out like how did we have like murderous blood running through like my family, you know, and that kind of made me obsessed with the case, and I chased the case and I wrote stories about the case. Up to the point where we were going to write a book about the story. And then me and a colleague decided, you know, like she would interview the victims and I would interview the suspects. And this is where I chose to go and interview Leroux. You know, and if I have to be quite honest, you know, was I a bit obsessed with him before I went and interviewed him? Maybe, you know, but you know what it is, what sparked me with Leroux is that, you know, when he was arrested with his sister, eventually his mother as well, he was the only one that confessed. So out of the whole group, and the group's name, if you might remember, was Electus Pardeus, which means chosen by our God or something stupid like that. Um, so when I chose to go and interview Leroux, I already knew so much about it, and the as I said, the thing that sparked my interest so much into Leroux is that he was the only one that confessed to the murders. So in my head, I thought, like he's the only one that's not turned into a monster completely, and I was so curious to figure out why he was, out of six suspects, the only person to confess. And what was really interesting, and I might say, like, two, it was interesting, but it also kind of made me see a softer side to him is that when he was arrested, he not only confessed to like the murders, but he took all the blame upon himself to protect his mother and sister, and that showed me like a softer side to him. So combine the curiosity to why he confessed to the possibility of like, he's, trying to protect his mom and his sister, it kind of gave me a little bit like a soft space, a soft plaque in my heart for him, and like I said, it was I was kind of fascinated with him as a character. So then I went and visited him in jail. I introduced myself, and the next moment he started contacting me out of jail. And before I knew it, I was visiting him week in and week out. And, I don't know, I'm sure that, psychology might prove my point or whatever, but I think when you talk to someone a lot, you like kind of form this bond. And I know that's what we did. It's like we kind of formed this bond between me and himself, that when we spoke or when I visited him, when we wrote each other letters, it wasn't a journalist and a murderer. It was like just Mariska and Leroux. So long story short, it was like a pen pal relationship on steroids, and it like just quickly got so out of hand. I think my obsession and my interest and curiosity like developed into a kind of, I wouldn't say Stockholm syndrome, but you know obviously the whole world couldn't understand what I saw in this guy, and till today, I've got many people, although many people have forgiven me or understood like my point of view after I've expanded like a million times. You still get those people that say, but yeah, murder is murder. And it kind of reminds me of the current case we have in the USA now, with Luigi, the CEO assassin. When I saw that case and I saw how the public reacted, to him, I kind of, it felt like a familiar feeling in me, like I felt this before. And yeah, and a little part of that reminds me of the story of Leroux, I don't know if the people watching this has followed the case so in depth, but initially, when they started the group, and especially Leroux and his sister, they were under the impression that they were doing good, like fighting against the devil, fighting against Satanism, taking out people that is horrible and wrong. So in their heads, they thought they were doing the right thing. And yes, these things happened when they were 14 and 16 years old, and then later again, 18 and 20. But there's another conversation that needs to be held about, let's say a mother with children, she introduces the children to an environment or setting from a very young age, let's say 10, 12. Um, it's a Christian movement. They are taught, like, stay away from the devil. Um, surely, like, children believe that their mothers teach them the right things and takes him to the right places and. So there's also a small element of, I wouldn't say just, like manipulation, but conditioning to some sort. So yeah, and then lastly, I know a lot of people don't like to hear this. And then, let me, as part of we don't talk about it, shock the people, but I did also have a crush on Larry. There was something about this tall guy with these like deer caught in the headlight eyes. Okay, in court, I don't know, I know a lot of women get criticized and what for falling in love with a bad boy or so. But if I had to admit a little bit. And then lastly, one thing that not a lot of people might know about LaRue or whatever is he's like a genuinely nice guy. And yes, I just called a murderer a nice guy, but you know, if you look at him as a person, individual, person to person, he's very soft, he's very respectful. Um, and ironically, I'm going to say, you can see he was raised right in terms of manners. They shouldn't have committed murders, obviously, and that's on his mom. But I mean, in general, LaRue has a good heart. And that was another thing I think that drew me to him like a moth to a flame. Now, how could this monster that we call a serial killer have such a soft personality? And there's a lot of other things, that weave into my relationship with him. And I can go on for hours and hours and hours and explain from mommy issues to being bullied as a child and. But that's most probably a conversation for another day. Or what do you say? Many people ask me, did I know LaRue before the murders? And the answer is no. I met him as a journalist. He was already in incarceration, awaiting trial at the Johannesburg Correctional Services. And, our friendship developed in the year leading up to the actual case where he turned state witness. So a lot of the times when people, judge me and ask me about, my relationship with LaRue and so on, you know, besides that it was a so-called romantic relationship or whatever, what people label it. I mean, it's a jail relationship, a prison relationship. It can only go that far, let's be honest. But I firmly believe that, I don't know if you believe in God, I don't know if you believe in the universe, but remember LaRue was the one that turned state witness against his own mother, his own sister, and. He was alone versus four others. And during the time he was state witness, I think he was only like the age of 23 or something. So our friendship and relationship um helped him a lot in the sense that, I supported him throughout the trial. And in an emotional way, you should know that appearing in court is obviously, not an easy task. And if you are guilty of murder and you are state witness, I think it is really an unpleasant task, and I was a friend and a shoulder for him to cry on during this time. And the other thing that people fail to realize is that, if it was not for LaRue's, statement against his mother, his sister, and Cecilia and Zach, the case would have been a bit harder for the police or the prosecution, to deliver the kind of sentence that we got. So it was important for LaRue to turn state witness, to stay strong, and to testify against, the other suspects. So when people judge me, I try. In the beginning, it really hurt my feelings. And even years afterwards, I always felt like had to work twice as hard to try and convince people that I am still a good journalist or, whatever. But another thing that, my friendship with LaRue has taught me or make me feel like is, like we don't give people ordinary time. There's a song by U2 where they talk about ordinary love. And sometimes I, wonder if people realize like the things I did and gave to LaRue was things like I gave him my time. I didn't judge him. I supported him during a time where he was one of the most hated people in the country. So I kind of, in a way, see it as I don't want to say community service, but I always like, or even during this time, I use this Natalie, what's the word? Explanation in my head, right? Let's say heaven is real, and when we die, we get to the golden gates or the pearly gates, and God asks me, Mariska, I gave you in your life this and this and that. What did you do with that? And during this time when I, decide, or I was still busy deciding, should I not? This is wrong, panicking that everyone was going to judge me when it, does come out. I just like couldn't stop thinking about what would I answer God if he asked me how or what did I did with the murderer that he put on my path. And I feel very confident that, I don't care who says what. I can't help me. I feel that my friendship and my relationship with Larue Stein was right in God's eyes. I feel that, I didn't judge. I felt like, love thy neighbor like yourself. And also, there was a greater good in this. He needed someone to help him through testifying against his own mother. And a lot of people always ask me, does he have remorse? Of course he has remorse. I could go on and talk hours about things that he's told me, nightmares he has. But I actually said, as far as I know, he still doesn't have a relationship with his mother. And I mean, it's, let's say, 4 years later. So I think, there's a lot of things that we don't know. And with regards to the case, I am happy that there is justice and closure. And yes, it will never bring back the victims, but at least justice was served and the people, the guilty perpetrators, are behind bars. I just say, there's always more to a story. And I think that, even with regards to the Krugersdorp murders and, I don't think we like touched on the tip of the iceberg, of really like how does a mother force her own children to commit murder? So many people always ask me, do you still talk to Larry? Blah, 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 blah. So guys, when lockdown happened, me and Larry's relationship just like deteriorated. Obviously when we couldn't see each other and I couldn't visit him in jail and the spark kind of, fizzled out. And, I went on with my life. And this was really a difficult part because our breakup was like a very sensitive matter, and maybe one day in the right time and place, Larry would tell his story, But after he tried to commit suicide, we didn't speak for about a year, 2 years, and then we made peace. And making peace was good for me and for him. I felt so guilty that he felt so let down by me. And I told him from the beginning, we had this conversation that this might not work. This is taboo, you know, it can't be done. And yeah, but I am happy to report, that we have made peace. He contacts me regularly. I haven't yet gone back to jail yet, and I've wondered why. You know, um, I don't know if it's like all the trauma that I've experienced post the relationship, or I don't know if I can face him. Like yes, we've made peace. Yes, we're not angry at each other anymore. But I've never ever ever been back to visit him in over 4 years again. And I've considered it. I've said to him, I'm coming. And then I just never pitch up. I think, there's so many things that happened to me because of that story. There's a lot of amazing things, a lot of great things. But equally, um, there's a lot of things that hurt me during that time. And maybe I can be honest and say maybe I haven't healed from everything. I've started, I'm definitely in a much better place than I used to be. But I think that because of, all of the judgment, the rejection, and, it's kind of made me a bit closed off. Like it's like I've built up my walls and I don't know how to let people in anymore. It's like people always ask me, what about LaRue? And aren't you scared he will come and stalk you when he comes out of jail? And my answer is always no. I know in my heart he will not harm me, and it's something I stand by. But I don't know when I would have the guts to go back and visit him again. And then the other thing is, and I intend to keep this, is that I told him that one day when he does get released out on parole, I promise that we can go have a steak and a coke, and that is a promise, I'm sure I'm going to keep. But for now, I've kind of decided to work on myself and work towards the things, I want to achieve. And after the jail relationship. And in my book, I've actually explained it. It really took a toll on me, the prison relationship. I think it's just like a natural way of my body and my soul protecting me against getting hurt again. I mean, what else can it be? Do you have a story you need to tell, or is there something you don't want to talk about? Email me on mariskakutser@gmail.com with the subject line We Don't Talk About, and I might just invite you on the podcast. Catch us next time on We Don't Talk About, the podcast where we talk about all things that make people uncomfortable, controversial, and taboo. Boo.